Your body walks, but your spirit limps. Like your smile is real, but your soul is screaming. You speak your truth, but your ego edits every word. You've achieved so much, yet a silence inside keeps asking, is this it? They see your strength, but they'll never know the price you paid just to stand. 4 thrones await your return. Let your ego bow, let your spirit rise, let your soul remember, and let your body soften. A human being is not merely a body, nor is consciousness limited to thoughts or emotions. The self is composed of 4 distinct but interconnected centers of power, which are called thrones: the body, the ego, the spirit, and the soul. Each of these thrones represents a different layer of your being, and each one plays a vital role in shaping your reality, behavior, perception, and destiny. Many seekers mistake the ego for the spirit or the soul for the body's instincts. When a person becomes aware of these thrones and learns to distinguish between them, a new level of self-awareness begins to unfold. Let us now begin with the first throne, the one closest to earth. The body is the field where karma manifests, and where spiritual lessons take root in the material world. The body is governed by the laws of earth and gravity. It pulls your awareness downward into density and time. This is not a punishment, it is a sacred agreement. The body allows you to experience linear time, cause and effect, and the sharpness of physical contrast. Pleasure and pain, hunger and satisfaction, tension and relaxation, all these are tools through which the soul can grow while incarnated. However, the body cannot guide the deeper aspects of your evolution on its own. It responds to impulse, repetition, and instinct. Without the other thrones, especially the soul and spirit, the body will operate from habit and survival. It becomes a closed loop of stimulus and reaction. That is why spiritual mastery begins with learning to observe the body without becoming lost in it. The body must be honored, not obeyed. It must be listened to, but not mistaken for the self. The ego is the most misunderstood throne in modern spirituality. Many teachings treat the ego as a villain, a force to be destroyed or transcended. But this is a dangerous and incorrect view. The ego is not your enemy, it is the guardian of your individuality. It defines the boundaries of your self-image. It builds the idea of I am me and you are you. This separation is not illusion, it is a necessary illusion, one that allows consciousness to interact with reality through unique perspectives. The ego forms primarily through experiences in childhood, emotional patterns, and social conditioning. It builds stories about who you are, what you deserve, what is safe, and what is dangerous. These stories shape your reactions, your choices, and even your beliefs about the divine. The ego becomes like a pair of glasses through which you view the world. If the lenses are scratched or distorted, you will not see clearly. But if the lenses are clean and transparent, the ego can become a servant of clarity. The ego's throne is located in the mind, especially in the parts responsible for comparison, memory, language, and identity formation. It creates internal dialogue. It worries, plans, judges, and categorizes. But it also protects you. The ego is what stops you from stepping into fire, from overexposing your vulnerability, or from collapsing into psychic overwhelm. It has its rightful place. The danger arises when the ego believes it is the only throne that matters. When the ego cuts itself off from the soul and spirit, it begins to rule by fear and control. It clings to certainty, resists transformation, and denies anything that threatens its narratives. In this state, the ego becomes tyrannical. It tells you that you are separate, unworthy, or superior. It builds a false kingdom of comparison and competition. True spiritual growth does not kill the ego, it educates it. It brings the ego into alignment with the higher thrones. It teaches the ego to be a translator, not a dictator. When the ego learns its true function, it becomes a bridge between the divine and the human, between the eternal and the temporary. It becomes a loyal interpreter, guiding your body and personality while remaining humble before the vastness of your soul. The spirit is the fire that gives life its direction. While the body gives form and the ego gives structure, the spirit gives motion. It is the flame that pushes you to evolve, to move forward, to break through limits. You can think of the spirit as the breath of God within you. It enters you at birth and leaves at death. It is what animates you, what burns in your eyes when you are alive with purpose or passion. The spirit does not remember the past like the soul does. It is not interested in history or karma. The spirit wants liberation, transformation, evolution. It is connected to divine will, not personal identity. That is why the spirit often pushes people to take risks, to leave comfort zones, or to abandon structures that no longer serve their growth. The spirit acts through intuition, inspiration, spontaneous clarity, and sudden shifts of awareness. When a person receives a vision, feels a surge of inner fire, or senses an unexplainable pull towards something meaningful, that is the spirit speaking. It often speaks in symbols, images, or intense impulses that are hard to explain logically. In ancient traditions, the spirit was known as the solar flame, a force that descended from the divine sun to awaken the human heart. However, the spirit alone can be dangerous if not balanced by the soul and the ego. The spirit is a fire, and fire consumes. If a person follows only their spirit without wisdom, they can become reckless, unstable, or even destructive. The ego must contain the spirit's fire without extinguishing it, and the soul must give it context and timing. Only then can the spirit act in harmony with destiny. In energetic anatomy, the spirit is often felt in the solar plexus and chest, where the personal will meets the higher purpose. When the spirit is blocked, people feel numb, stagnant, or depressed. When it is awakened, they feel unstoppable, creative, and clear. The goal is not to tame the spirit, but to listen to it, to honor its messages, and to direct its energy wisely. The soul is the deepest throne and the hardest to describe. It is the part of you that existed before this life, and will continue after this incarnation ends. It is not made of flesh, thoughts, or energy in the usual sense. It is made of eternal memory, the memory of your divine journey across time, space, and dimensions. The soul is the master architect of your evolution. It carries your unique signature, your sacred name, and your contract with existence. The soul remembers everything. It remembers who you were in other lives. It remembers the lessons you came to learn and the energies you came to embody. It chooses your body, your family, your challenges, and your gifts with perfect precision. The soul operates on a level that cannot be grasped by the mind alone. It speaks in feelings, symbols, and moments of profound resonance. When you meet someone and feel you've known them forever, or when you arrive at a place that feels strangely familiar, it is your soul that is recognizing something beyond this life. The soul exists primarily in the causal body, which sits above the astral and mental planes. It is rooted in divine intelligence, yet it wears a cloak of individuality. Your soul is like a note in the symphony of creation, distinct yet inseparable from the whole. In secret traditions, the soul was called the immortal mirror because it reflects both your personal story and the divine essence at once. Many spiritual seekers confuse the soul with emotion or memory, but emotions can belong to the body or the ego. The soul is not reactive, it is observational and guiding. It watches, it waits, it nudges. It will never shout or force. That is why many people miss its voice. The soul only speaks when you become quiet enough to listen. Those who have lived many incarnations with focused spiritual learning carry what is called the mark of the primordial incarnate. These beings are not simply old souls. They are original carriers of divine archetypes. Their presence feels heavy, luminous, or unsettling to others. They often awaken early in life, carry unexplained grief, or exhibit wisdom far beyond their age. Their journey is not easier but deeper. They incarnate not only to learn, but also to anchor a certain frequency on Earth. These thrones do not always operate in harmony. In fact, most of the time they are in conflict. They argue, they overpower one another, they give contradictory impulses, and they demand different forms of loyalty. This inner conflict is not evidence of brokenness, it is evidence of complexity. But unless a person learns to recognize these internal divisions and listen to their separate voices, They will experience chronic inattention, confusion, and spiritual paralysis. One of the most common and devastating inner conflicts is when the ego hijacks the voice of the soul. This occurs when the ego, in its fear of losing control, begins to mimic the soul's tone. It tells you this is your purpose, when in reality it is only reinforcing its own narratives of superiority, safety, or validation. The ego begins to speak in spiritual language, but its motives are not truth or growth. They are reinforcement of identity. You can recognize this when you feel spiritually certain but emotionally anxious or rigid. The ego always resists change that threatens its role, so it will invent reasons why you should not leave a toxic job, why you must maintain a self-image of being good, or why you deserve more recognition. These may feel noble or even enlightened, but they carry an energetic tightness. The soul's voice feels still, expansive, and timeless. The ego's voice feels urgent, defensive, or superior. In this dynamic, the person becomes trapped in spiritual performance. They talk about growth but resist vulnerability. They appear wise but secretly feel numb. They chase spiritual experiences but avoid deep stillness. The soul does not compete, it retreats. When the ego takes the throne, the soul steps back and waits. Only when the ego becomes humble through failure, grief, or surrender does the soul return to speak. Another subtle but critical conflict arises between the spirit and the soul. These two thrones are both divine, but they operate at vastly different speeds. The spirit is fast, it burns, it moves, it acts. The soul is slow, it contemplates, remembers, and moves according to long arcs of destiny. When the spirit becomes too dominant, it pushes for action before integration has taken place. It wants to create, express, liberate, and ascend, even when the soul is still in the process of learning, healing, or preparing. This creates a tension that feels like urgency without clarity. A person may feel a desperate need to act, speak, or transform, but they don't know why or how. They may start projects and abandon them. They may pursue enlightenment experiences but feel lost afterward. This is the fire of spirit burning faster than the soul's clock can sustain. The spirit must learn patience, and the soul must be willing to give the spirit permission to act when the time is right. When these two align, the result is destiny manifesting through action. The person moves not just fast, but in the right direction at the right moment. Their life becomes a dance between eternal wisdom and immediate expression. One of the deepest and most hidden conflicts is the ego's fear of the spirit. The ego thrives on predictability, safety, and control. The spirit is unpredictable, wild, and governed by divine impulse. The ego knows that if the spirit is fully awakened, many of its structures will collapse. This includes false identities, attachments, roles, and expectations. The ego fears the spirit because the spirit does not ask for permission. It does not negotiate. It moves. It commands. It initiates sacred disruption. That is why the ego often tries to suppress or sedate the spirit by distracting the mind, numbing the body, or feeding constant doubt. It will say, "Who are you to speak that truth?" or "That's too risky." It will surround the spirit's flame with walls of logic and social conditioning. But once the spirit breaks through, the ego has no choice but to surrender or suffer. This is often the moment of crisis in spiritual awakening. Everything familiar begins to fall apart. The ego calls it a breakdown. The soul calls it a breakthrough. In this moment, the ego must be retrained, not destroyed. It must be taught that the spirit is not here to annihilate it, but to reassign it. The ego becomes a translator, a protector of the new self, rather than a jailer of the old one. This transition is fragile, but it is the most powerful turning point in the journey toward true sovereignty. The ego becomes distorted not when it seeks protection, but when it refuses to evolve. Its job is to form and maintain your sense of self, but when it becomes rigid, it begins to resist any experience that might challenge its control. You can recognize a distorted ego by the way it responds to criticism, silence, and mystery. When a person becomes deeply uncomfortable in silence, when they compulsively check their phone, interrupt others, or fill every pause with noise, they are not just avoiding boredom. They are avoiding the collapse of the ego's identity. Silence is a mirror, and the ego fears mirrors. A healthy ego can rest in stillness without panic. A rigid ego becomes agitated and seeks distraction. Another sign of a distorted ego is a need to explain everything, especially emotions. If someone feels the need to constantly justify their reactions or to narrate their feelings as a defense mechanism, it is often the ego's attempt to stay in control. The soul does not need to explain its emotions. It simply feels and flows. Finally, a very subtle sign is resentment toward mystery. If a person feels anxious or irritated when something cannot be defined, labeled, or categorized, it shows that the ego is dominating. The soul thrives in mystery. The ego collapses under it. Please like this video and share your thoughts with us.